Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Caribbean Cricket Podcast episode. Do we want to call it an episode? Let's call it a Super 50 special, because Super 50 is upon us. The CG United Super 50, we're less than, 5 days away from this point of recording before the first game gets underway. TNT are the defending champions, but every team has one by one slowly started to release who their chosen squads are for Super 50. We're going to, over the course of this next week, meet with, invite various different stakeholders on to talk through each particular squad. What's the strengths? What's the weaknesses? Who we should look out for? And so on and so forth. It's just worth saying, prior to me introducing my very first guest of the very first show of Super 50 2022, is that because of West Indies being knocked out of the World Cup so early, all of the players who aren't immediately involved in the Test series have flown back to the Caribbean and will be available for each Super 50 squad if they have been selected. So consequently, squads originally were supposed to be 14 members only, but many of the teams, Jamaica being one of them, who we're going to focus on today, have now expanded their squads as a result of the T20 players now returning back to the Caribbean to take part in Super 50. Also, and finally, any players who are involved in the Test series will only, against Australia, will only be available for the first round of Super 50 games, and then they will have to fly off to Australia to go and prep ahead of the West Indies Test series out there. So all of that is worth considering prior to engaging with Super 50 2022 in terms of some of the rules and regulations this year. So the first team we're actually going to look at today is a team close to my heart. Behind me, if you're watching this on the visuals, you can see my Talawars jersey. I should say the reigning champions, the Jamaica Talawars, CPL reigning champions. And it's apt actually because the guest I'm getting on, I was on Hits 92 many months back, and on Radio Jamaica many months back, talking with this guest about the Talawars' chances of winning CPL. And both of us talk down the chances. So it's apt that we start with the Jamaica Scorpions for Super 50, because dare I talk down the Scorpions now as they come into the CG United Super 50, because of all I know, we're due to win that competition as well. But my guest is Radio Jamaica's own Jerome Foster. If you watched last year's kind of prep ahead of that tournament, you'll remember that Jerome was on looking at the Scorpions squad in 2021. And I'm pleased and delighted to invite Jerome back on for this year's edition of Super 50. Jerome, how you doing?
I'm great, Marshall. Good to be here again. Great venture. You guys continue to do great work as well in regards to West Indies cricket on the whole. So good to be back.
No problem. And listen, when it's about Jamaica cricket, Jerome, you're always my first port of call, because you are the person I trust most to give me kind of a breakdown synopsis of what goes on in cricket back home. And listen, Jerome, this Scorpion squad is interesting because there's so many names that I'm telling you now that when people watch this, they're going to say, where's this person? Where's that person? So we just need to unpick all of this and see where we go with it. So first things first, let me just bring the squad up on the screen, Jerome. Sorry. So the Jamaica squad, for those who don't know it, it was released yesterday on Monday evening. Jermaine Blackwood, captain. Rovman Powell, vice-captain. Aldane Thomas, Brandon King, Marquino Mindley, Nicholson Gordon, Chadwick Walton, Jamie Merchant, Alwyn Williams, Nkrumah Bonner, Dennis Bully, Andre McCarthy, Javar Royal, Pete Salmon, O'Dane Smith, and Sheldon Cottrell. Jerome, first things first. Let's not even talk about missing names. Just first things first. What was your gut reaction when you saw that squad?
I was actually very surprised with the makeup of the squad because the previous coach would have been Andre Coley, and
Mm,
he had a blueprint that he was going youth for
mm,
the next couple of years. With the selections, even with the retention of players and the players who would have been handed contracts for the upcoming season, they, I thought they would have been the core of this team going forward. But obviously, the West Indies being eliminated early from the T20 World Cup limited a couple of spots because you expect the West Indies players to make their regional teams. I would
mm.
hope that is part of it. Um, Secondly, I found it a little bit strange to see somebody like a Chadwick Walton back in the four
Mm,
because at 37, I don't think the West Indies would be looking in that direction. I saw him captaining a couple of the games in the trial matches. I think they played like 5 trial matches in a 2.5 week window where they played a
mm,
game every other day across the country. So I just thought that was a ploy to have somebody experienced almost guiding the youngsters. I didn't know he was at the front and center of the selector's mind to get him in the team. And his scores in the trial matches weren't great. I don't think he actually had a half century. I think his best was 40 odd. So that was the sticking point for me initially. The makeup, the age of the squad. People like Bulai, uh, Walton, as I mentioned, Merchant is in his 30s, but he's economical. He has always done well for Jamaica Scorpions. Andre McCarthy is almost is a pre-selected white ball player for the Scorpions. He doesn't play
mm.
4-day cricket anymore for the Scorpions. Once there's white ball cricket, you expect Andre McCarthy to be a part of it. So outside of the non-selection of the players who were contracted and the selection of Walton, I was very surprised.
Now let's talk on Walton first because it's good that you started there because I was surprised to see his name there as well. Do you think that Chadwick has got the pick because the wicket keeping position has been problematic in both Super 50 last year, or although Super 50 last year, bits and pieces of the 4-day championship. Romain Morrison was in the side last year for Super 50. Do you think Walton's just got the pick because of his experience behind the stumps? And
There are a
maybe
couple of reasons.
go
One,
on, go on.
yeah, one, the coach has an issue with the opening position.
Mm,
So there's no John Campbell for
of course.
obvious reasons. He's been banned for 4 years for the evading and refusing to take a test thing with Jadko. So he's not there. So that leaves a massive gap. So
Mm,
instead of looking for one to partner John, you're now looking for two openers. So Leroy Lugg, who was used at the back end of the 4-day season last year, he was contracted, but he didn't really do anything in the trial matches.
mm,
I think he got a 50 in the second to last game, but it was a hairy fairy 50 really.
mm,
Not an innings that was built. It was more just slugging and hiking his way to a score.
mm.
So the opening position is a massive problem for the selectors. So I think they were looking for experience. Hence, they went with Walton. Kirk McKenzie, who was also drafted by the franchise, he's part of the West Indies Emerging Players
Yes.
Academy.
Mm,
So I understand, based on my information, that the Scorpions had the right to refuse
yes.
or the right to choose him first because they would have
Mm.
contracted him initially, but they gave him the option of going to the West Indies Emerging Academy and probably to keep him in the minds constantly of the selectors that, hey, he's a part of your West Indies B team. Because I would classify the emerging team as B team in my estimation.
But then,
So
Jerome,
that,
let me just jump in there.
yeah,
Would you have given Kirk? What would you have done though? I would have given Kirk the spot. If they're looking for an opener, I would have given it to Kirk.
yes, I would have because for me and Jamaica cricket, I think he's one of the positive lights in recent times. From
Mm,
the Under 19 World Cup and his score in that Under 19 World Cup where he almost got that 100. I thought Kirk would have been a massive investment for the Jamaican franchise and Jamaican cricket. So him getting the opportunity to be almost at the center stage for the Scorpions would have been ideal in my estimation. So I thought he would have been the first pick to go with John. had John been available. John not being available, he would have been my mainstay, and then I go for somebody else to go around the team. So I found it strange actually when they said that they deferred him to the West Indies Academy, but it's probably what's best for him. No, because he's actually at the HBC Center in Antigua and he's working with the players, so that's probably the best route. But Chadwick's retention, I think, has to do with the dilemma of the opening position. Not really the wicket keeping, because Alden Thomas is actually a good glove man. He's actually very good with the gloves. But in front of the wicket, he hasn't been as productive as you'd want. Because remember, he did open in the Super 50 a couple years
Yes,
ago as well,
exactly. Yeah.
and didn't do really great stuff in front of it. So that's a problem. The problem is really finding a balanced and experienced opener because of the gap created by John Campbell's absence.
Right. So that explains Walton, but then that then begs the question, who's opening with Walton? Because when I look through that squad, I can only see Brandon King. And whether Brandon King should be opening in 50 over cricket is debatable in and of itself. So do you think they're going to go Thomas and Walton? Thomas didn't work opening last year. So what?
I think Alwyn Williams,
Oh,
the left-handed opener, left-handed batsman, would be the natural opener. He's the only natural opener in the team. The natural opener, because he opens a 4-day cricket. Didn't do well either. Hasn't had great scores, but he's been in great form in Jamaican cricket. His team won the local T20 competition. He was a star there. His
right.
team went to the final of the 50 over competition at St. Mary. He did extremely well in the final. I think he made 80 odd and the team made like 150. So he's been the man of Jamaica cricket locally in terms of as an opener. So he would have been the initial partner for Walton, I think, because I think Walton would probably start as the experienced man. I don't think you want a 37-year-old on the bench, because that would be sending a wrong signal. Why would you select him in the first place? So I think he's going to be the partner for Walton initially, and then after, I think King bats at 4 in this team actually.
Right. So that's my point. King to me is a 4 at the later. He's not 3. Yeah, he's a 4. He's probably a 4 if the team is well balanced.
Or probably 5. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Alwyn there, because in fairness, if you don't select somebody who's done well in the club cricket scene, what's the point of the club cricket scene then? There has to be a natural progression. Whether that means he's ready or not, it's got to be the natural progression. But you mentioned Leroy Lugg earlier, and I'm just intrigued to see where you feel Leroy's game has gone, because a year ago, and even going into the 4-day season, you would have thought, right, Leroy, you're the next taxi off the rank, so to speak. Jamaica are ready to invest in you. And then he even got the CPL deal. I think it was with St. Lucia. Was it with the Kings? St. Lucia, I think it was. And now we fast forward to Super 50 and he's not even in the squad. Do you think that's deserved?
I would say no, because if he's part of the future, one season wouldn't be good enough to really test him to see how good he's going to be. Because remember, with youngsters, anytime, technically he's not the greatest, to be quite frank. He's not the best technically. He struggles when the ball is moving, but in the Caribbean, the ball doesn't move along for a long, sustained period of time. So it's about working with his technique and probably finding ways to cope with the moving ball, which isn't a best asset for any Caribbean batsman right now, if we're being very frank. So I think, well, honestly, I think it's his performances in the trial matches, his manner of dismissals, that are a cause of concerns for the selectors, who told me that they went for the experienced team, the experienced selections, because of the short turnaround time that they had to prepare. They had 3 weeks to prepare for the tournament. So hence they selected a team with so many experienced players.
I mean, we could talk on that point for days, because Jamaica aren't the only team to fall to this mindset where players who I would say, if you're not part of wider West Indies thinking anymore, and I don't get me wrong, Jerome, a man has to be able to eat a food, and for some of these people, this is still their livelihood, right? But I don't know. I find it hard to accept some of the names being there, and who it means is losing out as a result. But if we just briefly focus on who's losing out, I started to write down several names who either featured in Super 50 last year or were part of the 4-day competition. I don't know if you might not have time to go through all of them, but these are just some names I immediately wrote down without even looking. I just wrote these names down. There's no Derval Green, no Javel Glenn, no Paul Palmer.
Well, Palmer opted out for family reasons.
Oh, okay, fine. Thank you. That's why we do these shows, so people actually know the reasons, right? Okay, so Palmer's opted out. That's fair. Leroy we just spoke about. Jerome, where's Fabian Allen?
I was told that he's told JC that he's unavailable, as well as Andre Russell. They were both contacted by the select and the Jamaica Cricket Association, and the CEO said to me that they told them that they're not available.
Ah, boy.
Yeah.
Boy. Right. Well, Andre, I understand. Fabian, I understand less so, because surely he has ambitions to play 50-over cricket for West Indies. Anyway. So let's focus on those two names then. At the top, that I said Derval Green, Javel Glenn. Would you have included them?
Green, no, because you have Odin Smith now in the team, who is probably a little bit more impactful with the bat.
Yeah,
balls a lot faster. Probably not as consistent as Derval, but I think if you're going youth, which I thought they were going, Odin would actually get the pick. And I think this is his very first time playing for the Scorpions, to be honest.
Yes, yeah.
Because he was at the Red Force and the Harpy Eagles before. So, but I think Smith being in the team, as well as there's another bowling all-rounder that is there, Pete Salmon.
Yes.
So I don't think you're going to be looking for a third one, because Marquino Mindy is going to be your pace bowler, as well as Nicholas Gordon. I remember you're going to be in Antigua and Trinidad, so you're not going to have express wickets.
Yes,
so you need that additional medium pacer.
What about Javel Glenn?
As for Javel Glenn, not surprised. He hasn't really done anything domestically with the bat. He was at the trial game. I think he got a 30 odd in one of the games. But other than that, nothing to write home about. And he has been playing cricket in the USA for a long period of time. So I don't know if it's him not being able to produce enough runs in the trials, or him being able to displace. Well, obviously he wouldn't be able to displace a specialist in King, McCarthy, Bonner, or Rovman Powell in your middle order. So maybe that's the reason why he was selected.
Okay, so in terms of then the squad that we've got, because here's the next problem, Jerome. Jermaine Blackwood and then Nkrumah Bonner will leave to go to Australia. They're almost certainly in the test match. Well, that's they're in the test match squad. Like that's obvious, right? So Jermaine will go, Nkrumah will go. That will bring the squad down to 14 names, right? Now, in fairness, Jamaica could go ahead with those 14 names. They don't actually need to call anybody further in after those two go. But when those two go, I mean, Jerome, that significantly weakens the side, does it not?
Yeah, it does. It does. And remember, Blackwood will be captaining the team for the first 3 games, which is another talking point for me. But he's a very experienced player. He did well a couple of seasons ago. I think he got 100 against Trinidad in the semi-final. Also with Chadwick Walton, who also had 100. So he's done enough in regional cricket for him to be respected by opposition. So that's already a missing point. So you have that big match player or the key player that oppositions would be almost wary about and worried about, that he can cause some damage. And Nkrumah Bonner, I think, is the key to this batting order. You have King, stroke player, natural stroke player. McCarthy is a very good time off the ball. He's a very decent batsman. He's always giving you the sense that he should have been playing for the West Indies. He just doesn't get the big scores consistently. So Bonner is going to be the key. He's going to be the man that holds the innings together, because he normally bats longer than everybody else. He spends more time than everybody else. Blackwood would probably be, and even though I said Alwyn might be the opener, I think Blackwood might be the opener for the first couple of games. Because of how he has been utilized with white ball cricket in the past. It's always in the top 3. And how this team sets, I think maybe it will be better for him to open, because if you have King, McCarthy, Bonner, and Powell, those are four strong players. So you'd probably want them in the middle of the order. I don't think Blackwood fits into that into that middle four. Yeah. So he would probably open. But Bonner leaving would be a bigger miss to me in this team than Blackwood leaving. As much as Blackwood is the West Indies vice captain in the test team, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I follow you. I follow your train of thought there. So then let me pivot to this then. Of the players who are currently in that squad, so Jermaine Blackwood, test player, Rovman Powell, T20 player, but you could argue is ODIs. Brandon King got a run this summer as part of the ODI team. Marquino Minley's always been on the fringes of the test 22-ish. Nkrumah Bonner, test player. Odean Smith, T20 player. Sheldon, T20 might be. And sorry, Odean T20/ODI. Sheldon, T20, maybe ODI. Of that squad you see there, who are you looking for? Sorry, who are you looking to have big performances from to push a case for ODI selection? And the reason why I stress this, Jerome, is West Indies are likely to have to go to the ODI World Cup qualifiers, right? This is the only 50-over cricket that any new West Indian head coach can really base stats, data, and facts on. We're not playing this in 2023. Then we go to Zimbabwe. Then we go to South Africa to play them in white ball cricket. So this is it, Jerome. This competition right here is all the data that we're going to have to use. Who are you looking for? Who are you looking to from the Scorpion squad to show up and force selection in the ODI squad?
And when you say force, that would mean the players who have not had a cap before, because
no. Do you know what? Even if you refer to players who already, because for me, for example, Jerome, Brandon's not solidified his place in the ODI squad, so that's why I'm saying. So when I say force, I mean even people who are currently in it who possibly have a very weak hold on a position within the ODI squad.
Yeah. One, I think Minley is going to be on my radar for a lot of reasons. Because one, fast bowling in the West Indies hasn't been the greatest for the last couple of years, to be quite honest, in terms of white ball cricket. We haven't really found that bowler outside of Alzari Joseph for the last 18 to 20, 24 months, because he has done extremely well with white ball. But his red ball bowling wasn't that great. But white ball cricket has been good to him. He was named in the ICC Team of the Year in 2021. So he has done well. But outside of that, I can't find another white ball bowler in the region, fast bowler, who I can say, hey, is a sure pick for the West Indies 50 over our T20 team. Yeah. So I am looking at Marquino Minley as that possible option, even though he's more of a test length type of bowler. But I believe he's good enough in this region to cause problems for batsmen. Brandon King, obviously, what he did in the World Cup shows that he's probably a notch above the other batsmen in the team in terms of technical ability.
Yes.
So it's for him now to have consistent performances. The pitches in the region, he hasn't really done great here in the region. Outside of in St. Kitts, he really loves St. Kitts. He makes runs in St. Kitts like every other day. Yeah. So I think he has to find a way to stabilize his position in that white ball team, because there's so many questions that are going to be asked when the new coach comes in, whoever it is, or even if it's a new panel or whatever it is that comes up in January, February, before we head off to South Africa. The West Indies team needs 4 quality batsmen. 4 quality batsmen in 50 over cricket that we can actually depend on to score runs consistently. And it has to start here. I think Bonner is probably over the line in terms of his age for white ball cricket. So you're not going to be looking in his direction. You're going to be looking in a younger direction that you're probably going to pace that person and give them 6, 7, 8 years in international cricket for them to demonstrate how good they are. So King, Minley, and I have a lot of time for Jevor Royal. I have a lot of time for him because of his skill sets. Left arm orthodox. He packs a punch at the back end. But I believe he can be that 360 player, dynamic player in terms of his efforts in the field. He's very good in the field, good at the ball, and can be very handy with the bat. I remember he played for the West Indies under 19, I think in 2018. So he's not a new person per se, but his talent level is a lot better than the average cricketer that we have in the region. So those are the three people that I'm actually looking at. Jermaine Blackwood, not in ODI cricket. I don't think the selectors have given him a fair chance. Then again, I think where he bats is probably the problem, because they don't see him as that middle order man in ODI cricket who's going to rotate the spinners really well, or even score outside of the power play being lifted. So those three players. Rovman is, I think, I don't want to let it sound as if I'm berating him or anything. I just think that in 50 over cricket, he overcomplicates himself.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, he overcomplicates it. So I don't think he tries to say that he's going to a middle ground when he's batting and ends up doing nothing. And then it's almost as if he goes into last gear and then goes back into T20 mode where he thinks he's in a rush to score runs. So he hasn't mastered batting in 50 over cricket per se. So he has a lot to prove, because remember, pressure is going to be on the captain again. He's struggled in the T20s. He's going to be under pressure for the World Cup qualifiers, and even for the next set of series that we have leading up to that. So he might be on the fringes of the minds of the selectors. But the three players for me, they are King, Mindley, and Javor Royal.
So let me just end with this then, Jerome. And as usual, you've been a fantastic, informative guest. I'm surprised you didn't say Nicholson Gordon. Now, hear me out. Hear me out, Jerome. Because I watched Nicholson Gordon in the 4-day matches, and I said, you know what? This man is a wild man bowler, but he takes wickets. He seems to have a knack of taking wickets. Then when the Talawars used him in CPL, I said, what's going on? There's no way this guy can bowl in T20 cricket. He'll be way too expensive. But he took wickets again, and seemingly always at crucial times. I know Nicholson is 31, and might be 30 still, 30, 31. So potentially ages against him. But say he went through Super 50 now, Jerome, and still carried on that knack of taking crucial wickets at crucial times. Does he come into the selector's mind?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because at 31, I think he only has 5 first class list A matches. He's going to be hard pressed to get into that to our international team, unless he actually comes and take probably 20 odd wickets in this competition. Honestly, I like his energy. I like his enthusiasm. He's a different character in terms of what he brings to it, and he's always thinking about the game, and he's always on his feet. He's always chanting and all of that. But I just think that for you to be a part of an international team, 31 is probably a little bit too late for a fast bowler. That's just me still. That is just me. I'm not knocking him, but it's probably a couple of years too late. Because he's not express quick at 31. He's not as if he's bowling 90s, 145 Ks consistent. He's just about 84, 85 at best. But he can give you wickets. That is probably the great thing about it. He's a good professional. But I wouldn't bank on him making the West Indies team though.
I had to raise it. So then the last person, and then we'll close it off, Jerome. And this is two Jamaicans talking now, and I always say to people that Jamaicans are more critical of their own than anybody else could be. I've been one of the harshest critics of Odean Smith, to the point where you wouldn't think I was Jamaican. The amount of time that I've questioned some aspects of Odean's game. Now, I just want to say I like Odean Smith. I think he's got a lot of talent. But the question I'm going to just put to you, Jerome, is this. What do you want to see Odean work on in this 50? Say he's around for the whole Super 50. Let's say Scorpions get to the final and he's around for the whole Super 50. What do you want to see Odean Smith work on to improve his game?
Game awareness, situation awareness. That is with the bat. But with the ball, I think he has been atrocious when it comes to being consistent with line and length. I often get the feeling that he's trying to do everything with one delivery. So it's as if he's trying to bounce you out, he's trying to hit you in front, he's trying to bowl you with one delivery.
Yeah.
So he's not really constructing an over to bowl or to create problems for the batsman to think about what else could he do. It's almost as if everything's just happening in a hurry, just happening in a flash. So for me, be a little bit more street smart with your bowling. Construct a proper over. Construct overs. Think less about pace and more about accuracy. That is what I want from Odean. Because Odean is, to me, he's a naturally gifted athlete. Yes. You can have somebody running from 15 steps and delivering 145 Ks and we cast him one side.
Yes.
That is natural gift. That is something that you can polish and work off and get into a premium position for a long time. You don't create a player because of 2 or 3 years, because he hasn't had a lot of red ball cricket behind him. So he doesn't have that amount of assets to call on to say, this is how I bowl an over, this is how I build an over. It's 50 over cricket is almost like a test day. You have to bowl almost 12, 13 overs a day. So he has to figure out what is the best thing to bowl in certain situations. I know that at the back end of the innings, it's very hard for the bowlers. It's ridiculously hard for them. But the initial phases of his spells, I just don't get that he's thinking through it enough. Because you know what he can do with the bat.
Yeah.
But even what he can do with the bat is almost as if he thinks it's going to come off every single time once he goes to that wicket, that he's going to slug his way to a 80 or a 60 of 20. And it's not going to work. So being a little bit more game smart, a little bit more street smart with the bowling, and I see him as a good asset for West Indies cricket going forward. Because those numbers are not something you just get up and produce every day. A man who can just come in and change a game in 15, 16 balls, and that same person can still take the ball and give you 6, 7 overs, none for 30, 2 for 30, 3 for 30, because of the pace that he has. So he's in good hands now with the fast bowling regime, because I think Andrew Richardson is a head coach now. He's going to spend a lot of time with him and his bowling. I just think more some mechanical issues that he has. He constantly falls away to his left when he bowls, so he's always down the leg side with the ball. He's always angling the ball on the leg side. So it's to get him a little bit more upright and get him a little bit more straight when he's in delivery mode, that I still believe can help him. But organizing 6 balls, repeating your action, those are the things I would ask from Odean. I don't want him to come and prove that he can bowl 140 like he was trying to do against Ireland, that he can bowl the fastest in the competition. Think about your stuff, think about your strategy, and you should be good. Because naturally, you're gifted enough to bowl as fast as anybody else in the region.
You see what I take from that, Jerome? Less is more. That's what I take. That's what I take from that with Odean. Listen, Jerome, thank you so much for coming on, man. And that half an hour went by like it was 10 seconds or something. But thank you so much, because listen, you don't even realize these videos are so informative for the legions of fans, both within the region and the diaspora outside, to just get a bit more of a kind of analytical sense of how each franchise team is going to set up for this particular competition. So thanks so much, man.
No problem. I will love to join again.
No worries. I think the aim is to try and do more of these during the competition itself. So I'm going to touch base with you, and as we get to maybe, I don't know, halfway through the competition, let's touch base and see how the Scorpions are getting on.
No problem, mate.
All right then, no problem. So, ladies and gents, that was Jerome Foster from Radio Jamaica. That's the first in our series of looking at the different franchises ahead of the CG United Super50. Stay locked in, people, because we got more of these coming as we look ahead to see who will win in 2022. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.